The average American pulls into a Hardee's drive-thru around 20 times a year. That is almost twice a month sitting across from a menu that promises thick, juicy, handcrafted burgers and prime rib that sounds like it belongs in a steakhouse. But before you reach for that prime rib burrito or that oversized sandwich with the word charbroiled printed right on the wrapper, there is something you should probably hear first. Remember the last time you ordered something that sounded premium and felt anything but? If you have ever eaten at Hardee's and walked away feeling heavier than the meal should have made you feel, there is a reason for that. And it goes deeper than the calorie count on the menu board. Last month, I kept a Hardee's prime rib sandwich on my kitchen counter. Not in the refrigerator, not wrapped up carefully, just sitting there, the way you leave something behind by accident. Surprised. 2 days later, it looked almost identical to the moment it came out of the bag. The bread had not gone stale the way real bread does. The meat had not changed color the way real beef does. It just sat there, preserved and patient, like it had been designed to outlast your curiosity. My homemade roast beef sandwich started turning by the next afternoon. Real food does that. Food that has been through enough processing to survive a counter for 48 hours is telling you something, and it is worth listening to. A real prime rib starts with a bone-in ribeye roast, slow-cooked for hours, seasoned with care, sliced thick, and served warm. It is a cut that demands time and attention. It is the kind of thing you order at a restaurant where the chef has been working that station for years. What Hardee's puts in a paper wrapper and slides through a drive-thru window is a very different conversation, and today we are having it.
Hardee's built its identity on bold food, big burgers, thick cuts, the kind of marketing language that makes you feel like you are getting a steakhouse experience at a fast food price. The prime rib promotion leans into that harder than anything else on the menu. Prime rib on a burrito. Prime rib on a sandwich. Prime rib paired with egg for breakfast. It sounds indulgent. It sounds generous. It sounds like a deal that does not make sense at that price point. And that is exactly the problem. It does not make sense at that price point because what you are getting is not the prime rib you are picturing when you read those words on the menu board. Former employees and food industry insiders have confirmed that the prime rib used in Hardee's promotions arrives at the restaurant pre-cooked, pre-sliced, pre-seasoned, and vacuum-sealed in industrial packaging. It does not come in as a roast and get prepared in the kitchen. It comes in as a product, already finished, ready to be reheated and assembled. The kitchen at your local Hardee's is not slow roasting a cut of beef in the early morning hours before your breakfast burrito gets made. It is opening a sealed bag and following a reheating protocol. One former line cook described the process plainly. He said the prime rib shows up looking like it already went through everything it was ever going to go through. All we do is heat it up and put it somewhere. That is not cooking. That is assembly. And there is a meaningful difference between those two things, especially when the menu uses language that implies the first one. The texture gives it away before anything else does. Real prime rib that has been properly roasted has a specific resistance when you bite into it. There is a slight pull, a density that tells you the muscle fibers developed over hours of low heat. What comes out of a reheating station is softer in a way that feels processed rather than tender. Customers who have ordered it and then eaten actual prime rib at a sit-down restaurant describe the Hardee's version as closer to deli roast beef than anything resembling a prime cut. One reviewer wrote that it tasted like ambitious lunch meat. That is not a compliment. That is a diagnosis.
Hardee's has leaned on the word charbroiled for decades. It is one of their most consistent marketing points and one of the things that genuinely separates them, at least on paper, from competitors who use flat-top grills. Charbroiling implies open flame. It implies direct heat, char marks, that specific flavor you get when meat meets fire. It sounds like the more honest, more craft-driven way to cook a fast food burger. But charbroiled in a fast food context does not mean what your backyard grill means. The conveyor belt charbroiler that most Hardee's locations use runs the patty through on an automated track over gas flames at a set temperature for a set amount of time. There is no person watching it. There is no adjustment based on the thickness of the patty or the temperature of the kitchen that day. The flame is real. The process is not what the word implies.
And then there is the question of what is being charbroiled. The beef patties come in frozen, formed at a processing facility from ground beef that has been blended for consistency. A former Hardee's employee described the patties arriving in cases, stacked and frozen solid, each one identical to the last. She said every patty looked like it had been stamped from a mold because it had been. Real ground beef, formed by hand, varies in density and shape. Hardee's patties do not vary because variation is not part of the production process. The char marks on the finished burger are real. The flavor those marks add is real. But the idea that you are getting something meaningfully different from a premium preparation, something that justifies the pricing and the language on the menu, that part is marketing doing heavier lifting than the kitchen.
Hardee's portions are genuinely large. That is not a criticism, it is an observation, and for a long time it was a selling point. Monster Thick Burger, the double-loaded omelet biscuit, the prime rib burrito. These are not small items, and the size is part of the appeal. You feel like you are getting something substantial. What the size also means is that the sodium, fat, and calorie numbers attached to these items are genuinely staggering when you look at them directly instead of past them. The prime rib burrito carries well over 1,000 milligrams of sodium. The Monster Thick Burger reaches past 1,300 milligrams. Their loaded breakfast burrito sits at over 1,000 milligrams of sodium before you add a single sauce packet. The daily recommended sodium intake for a healthy adult is 2,300 milligrams. You can exceed half of that in a single item before you have touched your hash browns or your drink.
A nutritionist I spoke with described the sodium situation at Hardee's as particularly deceptive because the food does not taste aggressively salty the way some fast food does. She said the sodium is distributed across fat and sweetness in a way that the brain does not register as salty. You eat it and you do not feel like you ate something extremely salty, but your body registers every milligram. Your blood pressure registers it. Your kidneys register it. The headache you get 3 hours later registers it. The marketing never mentions that part. The fat numbers match the sodium for drama. A double thick burger with cheese carries over 60 grams of fat. They're hand-breaded chicken tenders, which sound wholesome, lighter, more straightforward, carry over 1,200 milligrams of sodium for a 3-piece order. That is before the dipping sauce, which adds its own sugar and sodium contribution. A friend of mine who was trying to eat healthier switched from burgers to chicken tenders at Hardee's for 2 weeks, thinking he was making progress. His doctor told him at his next checkup that his sodium numbers had not improved. He could not understand why. Then he added up the tenders.
Hardee's breakfast is where a significant portion of their loyal customer base lives, and the biscuit is the centerpiece of that loyalty. Hardee's biscuits have a reputation. They are flaky, they are buttery, they are the thing people drive specifically to get on a Saturday morning. The biscuit has cultural weight at Hardee's in a way that few individual menu items have at any fast food chain. So it is worth asking what actually goes into that biscuit, and what actually goes into making it. The biscuits are made in-store, which is one of the things Hardee's points to with genuine pride. Real biscuit dough, mixed and cut and baked at the location. And that part is true in a way that is more legitimate than many competitors can claim. But made in-store does not mean made simply. The biscuit mix arrives pre-formulated from a supplier. The ratios are fixed. The fat content is engineered for that specific flakiness, which means hydrogenated shortening plays a larger role than the buttery image suggests. One biscuit from Hardee's carries around 300 calories and over 700 milligrams of sodium before you put anything inside it. Add a sausage patty, add an egg, add cheese, and you are looking at a breakfast sandwich that exceeds 700 calories and pushes 1,500 milligrams of sodium before your morning is an hour old. Their monster biscuit, which layers sausage, bacon, egg, and cheese into one item, exceeds 700 calories and crosses 1,700 milligrams of sodium. That is nearly the entire daily recommended limit before you have had a single sip of coffee. A friend of mine ate Hardee's breakfast 3 or 4 times a week for several months. Not every day, just a few times a week. He justified it because he skipped lunch on those days, figuring it balanced out. By his next physical, his blood pressure had climbed enough that his doctor asked directly whether his diet had changed. He had not connected the biscuits, he connected them that afternoon.
The fried items at Hardee's, the hash rounds, the chicken tenders, the hand-breaded chicken sandwiches, go through the same fryer oil situation that exists at virtually every fast food chain and almost never gets discussed openly. Fryer oil does not get changed after every use. It does not get changed after every shift. At many locations, fryer oil cycles are determined by schedule and by color monitoring, which means oil gets used repeatedly across dozens of batches of food before it gets replaced. The older the oil, the more it has broken down. The more it has broken down, the more it contributes compounds to whatever is being fried in it that were not in the original oil formula. Former Hardee's employees have described being told to assess the oil by eye, by color. If it looked dark, change it. If it looked acceptable, keep going. The problem with that system is that oil that looks acceptable can still be well past the point where it is contributing negatively to the food cooked in it. One worker said they went through busy Friday and Saturday rushes without changing fryer oil because there was never a good moment to stop and do it during a rush. Monday oil was cooking Thursday's chicken. She did not say that as a proud memory. The hash rounds deserve specific attention because they are one of Hardee's signature items and they spend significant time in that fryer oil. They come in frozen, pre-formed, and they absorb whatever the oil is contributing at the time they are cooked. A potato that has been sitting in oil that has been running for multiple days does not taste worse in an obvious way. It tastes different in a way most people attribute to the restaurant being off that day. It is not the restaurant having an off day. It is an oil management practice that prioritizes throughput over quality.
Hardee's marketing has always been aggressive, bold, provocative in a way that is very deliberate. The campaign that positioned Hardee's as the burger for people who find other burgers too small or too careful or too concerned with appearances. The imagery of large portions, of indulgence, of not apologizing. It is effective marketing. It taps into something real about how people want to feel when they eat. But there is a gap between the language and the product that grows wider when you look closely. Handcrafted is a phrase Hardee's uses regularly. Handcrafted implies a person making something with skill and attention. In the context of a fast food kitchen operating at full speed during a lunch rush, handcrafted means assembled by hand rather than by machine, which is technically accurate and practically very different from the image the word creates. The burger is assembled by a person. The components of that burger arrived at the restaurant in a state that required very little of that person beyond putting them together in the right order. Premium is another word that appears on Hardee's menu boards with regularity. Premium in fast food means better than our cheapest option. It does not mean what premium means outside of fast food. The premium cut in the prime rib promotion is premium relative to the regular burger patty. It is not premium relative to anything you would find at a restaurant where the word actually earns its placement. A customer who worked in food marketing for 15 years told me she cannot eat at any fast food restaurant without automatically translating the menu language into what it actually means. She said handcrafted, premium, and fresh are the three most overworked and least regulated words in the fast food vocabulary. None of them have a legal definition that protects the customer's interpretation of them. They mean whatever the brand needs them to mean at that moment. She said reading a Hardee's menu after 20 years in marketing is like reading a contract written by someone who knows you will not hire a lawyer. Every word is technically defensible. Almost nothing means what you think it means. Hardee's positions itself as an affordable indulgence, better than the cheapest options, not as expensive as a sit-down meal. The price point for a combo lands somewhere that feels reasonable for the size of what you receive, and in the moment, at the drive-through window, the math feels like it works in your favor. But that calculation leaves out a significant portion of the actual cost. A meal at Hardee's that pushes 1,500 milligrams of sodium and 900 calories, eaten 2 or 3 times a week, compounds over months in ways that a drive-through price board does not account for. Blood pressure management. The cost of medication if those numbers start climbing. The energy that is unavailable to you on afternoons when the food coma from a high-fat, high-sodium meal is doing its work on your system. The doctor visits that eventually become necessary when habits that felt casual in your 30s start presenting as conditions in your 40s.
One doctor I spoke to described fast food math as present tense accounting. You count what you spent today. You do not count what you will spend in 3 years because of what you ate today. She said the restaurant industry benefits from that accounting gap more than almost any other industry because the cause and the consequence are separated by enough time that the connection never feels obvious. Nobody walks out of a Hardee's and immediately understands that the sodium in what they just ate is adding a fraction of a point to a blood pressure number that will matter in a decade. The connection is real. The delay just makes it easy to ignore. A friend of mine gave up fast food entirely for 45 days. He had been eating at Hardee's a couple of times a week for years. It was habit more than preference. He drove past it on his way to work. He knew the menu. It was comfortable. He did not think of himself as someone who ate fast food regularly. He thought of himself as someone who occasionally grabbed something quick. Then he counted the occasions and realized occasionally was adding up to around 8 times a month. The first 2 weeks were more of a psychological adjustment than a physical one. He did not crave the food specifically. He craved the ease of it, the not thinking, the pulling in and getting out with something in his hand without making a decision more complicated than which combo number. Cooking felt effortful in comparison, not because cooking is actually harder, but because the habit of not cooking had made it feel harder. By the end of the first month, his energy in the afternoons was noticeably more consistent. He had not changed anything about his sleep or his exercise, just the food. His wife noticed before he mentioned it. She asked what he had changed. When he told her he had stopped eating fast food, she said she thought it was something more significant. He told her it turned out it was.
I spoke to a former Hardee's employee who had worked at 3 different locations over 4 years. I asked her what she wished customers understood about the food they were ordering. She paused and said the biggest thing was the gap between what the menu implies and what the kitchen actually does. She said customers read words like prime rib and charbroiled and handcrafted and picture a kitchen that is doing something closer to restaurant cooking than fast food cooking. She said the kitchen is doing fast food cooking, efficiently, quickly, following a protocol. But the protocol is about consistency and speed, not about the quality that the menu language suggests. She said she stopped eating at Hardee's about 6 months into her first job there. Not because anything was dangerous, because once you see the process clearly, the product stops meaning what the menu says it means. She said when you know that the prime rib came in a sealed bag and got reheated, ordering the prime rib burrito feels different. The word prime stops meaning anything. She said she would not tell her family not to eat there. She would just tell them to know what they are ordering. And what they are ordering is not what the menu is describing. That is the most honest summary of the Hardee's situation I encountered in all my research. It is not that the food is dangerous. It is that the language around the food has been carefully constructed to mean more than the food delivers. And the gap between those two things is where your money and your expectations disappear. This is not about shame. It is not about telling you that every drive-through run is a personal failure. Hardee's has been part of American road trips, family routines, and quick lunch decisions for decades. For some people, it is tied to specific memories that have nothing to do with nutrition or food science, and that is a real thing that deserves acknowledgement. But memory and habit are different from choice. You can hold a memory warmly without letting it make decisions for you 3 times a week. You can appreciate that a biscuit from a specific place was part of a specific Saturday morning without needing that biscuit to be part of every Saturday morning going forward. The next time you see the prime rib promotion on the Hardee's board and feel that pull of it sounding like a deal, sounding like something special at a price that seems too good to be true, sit with that feeling for a moment, because too good to be true is usually one of those phrases that earns its reputation. Real prime rib takes time. Real charbroiling takes attention. Real handcrafting takes skill and care, and someone who is not also making 40 other sandwiches in the same 10-minute window. When all of those things are real, the price reflects them. When the price does not reflect them, something in that list is not as real as the menu implies. You deserve to know the difference. And now you do. So the next time you are driving past that yellow star sign, ask yourself one simple question. Am I choosing this, or am I just going through a motion I have repeated so many times it stopped feeling like a choice? Because there is a significant difference between hunger and habit. One serves your body.
The other serves a brand that is counting on you not looking too carefully at the gap between what the menu says and what the kitchen does. If you made it this far, you are already thinking more clearly about this than most people who pull into that drive-thru today. What you do with that clarity is entirely up to you, but let it be a real decision, a conscious one, not autopilot, not comfort reflex. A genuine choice made by someone who now knows what the prime rib burrito actually is, because you deserve better than ambitious lunch meat in a flour tortilla, and your body will quietly thank you every afternoon you give it something that actually deserves the words on the wrapper.